Greetings and welcome to the special IMCCA webcast during the COVID-19 pandemic. Instead of being at my desk today, which you've seen probably a million times at this point, I'm outside in the sunshine and the fresh air. That's intentional. I would like to bring a little bit of fresh air into the UC and collaboration industry. Unfortunately, we've had a number of players in the space throwing rocks at each other, putting FUD out there around what platforms are secure and not secure, and we're better than you and you're better than us. And I find that really unfortunate during a time when we should all really be supporting each other and telling the stories about how our collaboration technologies and services have essentially allowed our lives to continue during this evil pandemic. So I've lined up a number of interviews of people that'll tell stories just of that, of how the technologies that we've been working with have allowed them to serve their community and serve their clients and keep their families going. And hopefully this breath of fresh air will be a nice change of pace from all of the other stories that we're hearing, unfortunately, in social media and in the general media nowadays. So sit back, relax, and here's the first one.
Okay, so I want to have my first guest on this program introduce himself. Essam, why don't you tell everybody your full name, where you work, what you do, and where you're stuck?
Hi everyone, my name is Essam Refai. I'm based in Melbourne, Australia, and I work as I'm a team lead EV consultant at one of the building services consultants in Australia and New Zealand, and I'm taking care of the day-to-day design and consultancy and project management for the company, and yeah.
And you obviously you're staying home just like the rest of us around the world. Who do you have in your home with you? How big is your family? How many people are pounding the internet?
Yeah, it's thankfully it's only me and my wife and a 4 years old kid, and thankfully she doesn't have a mobile phone or an iPad at the moment. She's just stealing mine, so yeah, we're good at the moment.
Good. Okay, that's good to hear. And then everybody's safe and well?
Yeah. Thankfully, in Australia, we've been doing well. We had an early lockdown here, which have been doing us well in the numbers. Well, we'll see how it will go in the next few days, but at the moment, we're doing well.
Okay, so tell me about what, just briefly, what your job was like, what your duties were prior to this COVID-19 and the lockdown.
Yeah, so generally as a consultant, we used to do the standard consultancy thing, like other meeting with clients, catching up with the suppliers, and doing the day-to-day design and project management of and managing projects and taking care of business development for projects and so on. And this included at least 70 or 80% of my time either in the office, like team facing with either my teammates or in different client offices or client sites, or just meeting with manufacturers for coffee catch-ups. And generally, of course, that definitely changed since all the pandemic started. So before this, I had at least 1 or 1.5 day of my week, which I used to work from home to do all the back end stuff. But at the moment, with the full time being at home, we had to reverse back to to all of the communication, all what we're trying to do it virtually through video conferencing or even through mobile phones and phone calls. So it's significantly different, but thankfully we have been adapting to this well.
What technologies and platforms are you relying on? What are you using?
So as our company, we are Microsoft 365. So we're using the SharePoint with Teams integration and so on, which have been doing very well for us actually, even before this pandemic. So we can basically work from anywhere, and it actually helped us with the transition as well. But for me, like even aside from this, I do like the regular catch up with my friends, or either in Australia, or I happen to be I'm not an Australian native, so I happen to have friends and family in overseas, which is I'm actually more communicating with them now, and this is through different platforms such as Zoom, and even consumer ones such as Facebook Messenger, such as FaceTime, and so on. So I've been actually, at least I'm using 3 or 4 programs platforms at the same time at a day.
So you said you're 70 to 80% in office before, and now you're 100% at home. Is that how most of your organization worked, or are you different? I mean, how many people are now home for the first time versus home usually?
Yeah, that's like I would say our unit was approximately 180 people from overall we have 700 in the company, but the building services unit is approximately 180 people. At the moment, we are almost 99% at home. So our time used to be 70-80% either in the office or either at the client side, which used to be like a physical, like face-to-face meeting. At the moment, all of us are at home. We have to get approval to actually be at a client site, which is either for a site visit or a site inspection. Of course, we're not allowed, like nobody actually are allowing any more physical, like face-to-face meetings. So we like I would say it's only like 5% of what we were doing before are we doing now, which is have to be forced if we're handing over a project or something.
So how much of the normal operation, I mean, nothing's normal now, obviously, but
Yeah.
but how much of the business that you need to do, what percentage of it have you been able to do using Teams and using some of the other technologies that you were talking about? Is there a missing piece?
Well,
Is there a blip, or has it been, pretty steady?
well, I can say the transition wasn't really bad, and we had like we didn't lose. Like, of course, we lost a big percentage of it, but still, it didn't really affect the business as usual. So it's not as usual anymore, but we expect this to be the new usual thing. So we as projects meeting, we're doing all of this virtually. So whether we're meeting at a client side for a project meeting, that's all being acceptable to be virtually now. We're actually catching up with milestones and stuff like this through on. So I would say the physical interaction and the relationship management is the hardest part because this is the one I always believe that it's physically is done better. Even so, we have amended our operation with adding, especially with my team and other teams, have suggested having as anyone else virtual lunches, virtual happy hours, and virtual just gathering and catch ups. We're trying to do this with other people like clients and manufacturers, but because everyone is overwhelmed now, so you don't get actually the free time to do it with other people. So you do it more internally than externally. So I would say the external relationships are more now just professional focus, which may or may not, like be a good thing. But still you're missing, like the long term and the relationship management part. I would say this is a strong hit to it.
Okay, so if I'm paraphrasing what you're saying, you had experience using these remote tools before. You and your organization transitioned to them well. It's supporting you what you need. You're missing out a little bit of the personal face-to-face, but you realize that that's not a deficiency of the tools. That's just the way society is working right now. Tell me a little bit about what else is going on at home. You have a child that's doing early learning, right? And are they using some of this technology as well?
Yeah, so my child is 4.5 years old, so she was doing kinder program. So at the moment we had to transition to what we call like self-learning. So because unfortunately the government here are not supporting the kinder program to be remotely at the moment. So because the officially the kindergartens are still open, so you still can send your kids to it, but because of all what's happening, we prefer to have this at home. So we started looking at online platforms, which is they can be using, such as Reading Eggs, for example, and something like this, which have specific programs for the kids to be to interact with and to add to their knowledge. Also using UC platforms were helping because I suggested to my kid childcare to do like a catch up through Zoom for the kids at home and the kids at the childcare, and we've done it a couple of times, and the kids enjoyed it. My kid as well adds this to her friends. Like we obviously have a few friends and families here, which my child have a big girls like gang, which she used to catch up with every week. At the moment, she for a few weeks now she didn't meet anyone, and she happened to be an only child, so this actually also affects her day-to-day things. So we at least try to allow an hour on Zoom, like where we try to get her friends, even so that you're not really talking, because as you know, the attention span of kids on a video conference call is not going to be the best, but at least having them, like hearing each other and playing around each other while I have an iPad or a laptop just next to her and seeing her on the video actually helped her to get the interaction. So yeah, she's getting interface with the technology very early, which I think is going to be a good thing.
So then for her and for what you said before, it sounds like socially you're spending more time connecting with people and relatives and people that are distant than you would have been had this not happened. The platforms are working for you. The interaction's not the same. It's not face to face. Your daughter can't play together with other people, but she can parallel play over video, getting used to the technology. It pretty much sounds like the majority of what you were doing working and the majority of what she was doing learning seems to have been absorbed by all the UC and online learning platforms to the point where, again, you're missing being in front of clients, but the work that you need to do and the learning that she needs to do and the interactions are all happening.
Yeah, yeah. Funny enough, we find ourselves that more socially interacting at the moment with either friends or family or work peers more than before, because the fact that like you can go out and meet people anytime. Actually, we're holding this to the normal life, which you only go out on weekends and catch up with people once a week or twice a week. We used to call our family once a week, like only on the weekends. Now we actually do this on a daily basis. So we call our family and our friends. At least there is a couple of hours a day. We are talking with different people. We're interacting with them. Myself, I actually happen to speak because I have friends also in US and in Canada. I happen to talk to friends, which is we haven't actually been talking for almost 6 months or more. So it's actually, I can say it's actually bringing people together, and thankfully the technology was really helpful on this. Like, I can't really imagine if this happens like 20 years ago, how we could be doing. So, but thankfully the technology, and actually also the people running the technology or overseeing them, they were like fast enough to actually take care of this expansion. I've seen like crazy figures. How many minutes was it before or after for Zoom or Teams or whatever, and being able to actually keep up with this and keeping everybody connected is actually a very good thing.
Terrific. So, I agree with you that, the technology was ready to shine at this time, and we're really pounding it. We're giving it a very hard time, and plus or minus some hiccups and the unfortunate FUD that's been around right now, we are seeing the technology responding. All the technology, as you point out, that you're using Zoom and Teams and Messenger and FaceTime, for the most part, you're not running into people on the other end or yourself that are having technology problems. As long as you got the bandwidth and the tools there, you're telling me that it kind of is easy and works.
Yeah, it actually helped us introducing like more people to the technology. Like I can say my family, like they got introduced to using, like also like consumer platforms such as Viber and stuff like this, because they know that they can easily video call us when they need it. Like so I would never thought, like 5 years ago that my mom or my dad would be able to have, like have this as a way of interaction. We've seen a lot of the, like older people getting introduced to this, even kids, like we're saying 3 and 4 years old kids just asking. Now actually my kid just come to me and tell me I want to Zoom my friend, so this is start to be a phrase in our house now at the moment. So yeah, it's expanding and helping, which is, I can see it's very good. And as I'm saying, like yeah, I believe still the physical, like interaction, it will be a thing. But before this, it was, I would say, the mainstream is like we have to always go to an office, we have to always catch up and meet. Now you will need to do this as in a rational and like in a good like time managed way. So you won't actually have to go to every single meeting. You won't have to go to the office every day, because now it's just justified that how your time is being used.
Terrific. Thanks very much for sharing your story, and I hope you stay healthy and safe with you and your family. And we'll be in touch when this is all over.
Thanks, David. Same to you. Thank you so much.
My next guest on the show, Jason Ward, my friend who works for Involve in the UK. Jason, can you introduce yourself? Tell everybody what you do a little better than I did.
Hi, yeah, Jason Ward at Involve Visual Collaboration Limited, full title of the business. Working out of the UK, covering the whole of the UK, specialising corporate, government, justice, healthcare.
Terrific. So tell us what a day in your life was like before this pandemic. How often did you go to work? Where did you go? What did you do?
I live about 100 miles almost exactly from our head office. We only have one office. We've been practicing home working video for 10 years. This home has been my place of work now for that long. We adopted Movi as a home working tool when Movi was available to us. Before the pandemic, home working meant catch up time. Not everybody was home working. You were sort of disparate and distant from everybody else, but you got the bulk of those important project-based work done. Office time meant interacting with people, networking people, connecting with people, meetings. Of course, the difference now is everything's here. Everything I do at the minute is done at this desk. every management meeting, every team meeting, every conversation, every water cooler moment is done here. It might be a direct message chat using Teams. It might be a lot of video calls. Our video traffic's up several 100%. I'm yet to get the data, but several 100%. I'm looking at usage data of our clients, which is up 200%, but our own video data I haven't got my hands on yet. We've encouraged our users to not use the involved platforms to make more space for our customers. So we've encouraged our teams to use Teams more to keep the bandwidth and availability free on our platforms for our customers.
So break that down for me just a tiny bit more. So what tools and technologies are you doing? It sounded like you're using Teams. I assume that's Microsoft Teams, and you've also got a service that you provide. But again, just let me understand the technologies and the equipment that you're using.
We have an internal choice of how we can host our meetings. I have an involved cloud room for use for video meetings, and I also have Microsoft Teams as the preferred internal communication platform. It was up to the individual on how they would set up any meeting using what platform. We'd check the diary would tell us where to meet. Since the pandemics began, we've tried to encourage more users to host their meetings internally using Teams, which keeps the available space for our paying customers.
Okay, and tell us a little bit about your customers. You obviously had this collaboration engine available. It's a service that you provide with your organization, and you already described that it's up, several 100%. What's what kind of uses are they? What kind of jumped into this platform now that they needed because they couldn't travel?
Uses are beyond the reach of my imagination sometimes. Every imaginable use case that you and I can think of, David, there's a couple of guys a couple of steps ahead of us coming up with another brilliant use case. The stories that I'm hearing coming out of one of our teams on the British Sign Language signed interpretation sessions for healthcare sessions, but also for banking, for everyday life. That's quite an emotive subject and story to go through. I love checking in on that because I'm not connected to that on such a daily basis that I look at that like an outsider, even though it carries our organisation's name. Healthcare and Justice Video are the big users that are going up on a daily basis. I'm looking at the Meadow.link platform that we host for healthcare, which is on their network, so keeps all of the calls securely within their own network. And that's the one area that's up 200%. And I can see the curve from February through to now. We're flattening out on usage now. So there was this really steep curve, which was frightening because if it carried on, we were going to have to sort of really look at the available capacity, which we were prepared to do, but it is flattening out now.
Okay. Are people, were they able to jump to these tools easily? Did you need to provide any instruction or training? Did you need to get any extra equipment? How has it worked out for your clients and customers?
Interesting question. One thing I have heard from marketing from Amy is many of our inquiries are, we've got this Meadow thing, how do I use it? The web chat on the website for both Meadow and the involved websites, half of the inquiries are users wanting to know how to use it. We are launching a new free video-based training service for those users next week for one-to-one Q&A, here's how to use it sessions. We've got online libraries and stuff, but some people just want to ask a question that to them will be a silly question, but it's really important. So we're dedicating a guide to supporting those people remotely during working hours only.
What would have happened to these clients if they weren't prepared to use these tools that you had? I mean, would they be able to stay, in business or supporting, the healthcare industry or whatever they're doing without the collaboration tools that you're making available?
No, I don't believe they would. They will have gone and found collaboration tools from somebody else, but. I'm happier that they're with us, of course. We've got two types of video meetings happening in healthcare. blue gown to blue gown, so NHS worker to NHS worker. They're connecting with each other, meeting and collaborating like we are now. And then clinician to patient video calling is really important to what's going on there as well. We are also supporting that with, look, many of these users they open up a laptop, place the first professional video call that they placed for 2 years or whatever it may be. And look, that microphone and that camera and that speaker in your laptop's not very good. So the first problem I hit, you helped me with this, back in the day, was getting devices for our Medicare business, getting the external cameras, which we sometimes do have to take off the top and show to a particular condition or something, and headsets and USB devices. We have shipped in excess of thousands more than we normally would, because they're not getting them from their typical sources like Amazon, because they're less reliable and their stuff sold quickly. So they're turning to us for those typical catalogue items that we wouldn't have supplied before.
Okay, well, I'm glad you're providing that. If we turn the pages for a little bit, talk to me about your life personally and your family's life around, are you using these tools more than you would have in the past, and how are you using them?
Yeah, my daughter, I saw an advert on TV about restricting your kids' device time. I think if, as a parent, you can survive the pandemic, you've survived. Let's not judge each other on how many hours kids spend on devices and stuff. My daughter's mobile phone is her connection to her world, to her friends. She'll be on WhatsApp video, connecting with her friends all day long, talking homework, talking schoolwork, talking Roblox or whatever they're doing, because she can't go to the park and interact with these guys personally. She's got to interact with people, and that's really important. That, if this pandemic happened 10 years ago, before video was quite so prevalent, my daughter wouldn't be connected. So she socially, she'd have me, which, it's not ideal for her. She's got peers of her own generation speaking the same language to talk to on a daily basis, and she's doing that right now.
And what about with you and your colleagues and friends personally?
Friends were checking in on each other via text at the minute. We're not doing many of those virtual happy hours. There's this big promise that we're going to get together and do the social thing when the social thing's allowed. We're checking in on each other's well-being. The issue is family and an aging parents. So I've got my stepfather's birthday this weekend. I am going to find an excuse to get in the car, post a present through the door, wave through the window and say hello. But up until now, we've had a couple of multi-point Facetime calls to connect with them. You've got to pick a technology that they can use. So I'm always mindful about nobody's going to go into their house and show them how to use it. So what have they already got, and what are they already comfortable with using? So I had to be the guy that pulled all the multiple participants into one call. And it was the first time I did it. It's not that friendly, but it worked.
Yeah, no, I trust me, as from a fellow IT support person in my home to another, that guess who everybody turns to. I certainly hear that. Well, let me thank you for taking the time to explain to us what you've been doing in your terrific mission with the NHS and with healthcare there in the UK and supporting your community. It's good to hear the stories about how the technologies that we've been providing all along are really stepping up in this crisis to help people with their healthcare and with their social and with their friends. And, please keep it up. And thanks very much for doing what you do.
Yeah, and thanks to you and Polly, actually, for stepping in to enable us to help out just that little bit more with some of the devices and stuff like that. It's been noted. Thank you.
No problem. You know that all of the providers, Poly and many of the other providers of technology equipment, our shelves are bare. We've been selling the stuff out like hotcakes. But wherever we can do something good for the community and ship out products where it's really going to help and provide the most impact. I've been, a funny thing is, I work in a shop that this is my basement, my home office, and I've been doing designs and engineering here for over 3 decades. I've been pulling stuff out of storage and out of cupboards and out of test benches and shipping it out. Here's a headset. It's 9 years old, but it's a headset. Go ahead, here, have it. Here are the cameras. So yeah, we're doing whatever we can to get this technology out to our neighbors in our community and help out. And those are the stories that I want to get out. So again, thank you for joining me, and we really appreciate what you're doing.
Yeah, appreciate it. Great, good to spend time with you, David. Cheers.
So my next guest is somebody that I know pretty well. You have to say that about somebody when you're quarantined together with them. Why don't I let her introduce herself and tell us what she does for a living?
Yes, my quarantine partner. I am Helen Danto, and I am a licensed social worker, and I currently work for early intervention in New Jersey. And in that capacity, it's a mouthful, and developmental interventionist. And what that means in one sentence is I work with children birth to 3 years. For what I do, goodbye. For what I do primarily, I work with children who have identified language delays, and I try and help them bridge the gaps that they're currently exhibiting.
And which cat was that was visiting you just off camera? Was that Jack or Lily?
No, that's always Lily, who is just joined at my hip usually. Mm-hmm.
All right, so tell us briefly what your job involved before this COVID-19 pandemic happened. What would your daily or your work life be like?
I did face-to-face work. I go to children's houses and I do hands-on work with them. Doesn't get more direct than that. So that's what I would do.
Explain a little bit more deeply. What is hands-on work? What would you do with a child to try and help them get past some of their delays?
Okay, so hands-on would mean, for example, many children with language delays, they really don't have what's called joint attention, meaning that they really don't know how to attend to an adult to engage in any type of activity, whether it be blowing bubbles or playing ball or whatever. So a perfect example of hands-on would be if we're going to play ball, because that's usually fun, literally having the child hand over hand, having the child hold the ball, teaching the child to roll the ball. Usually there's a parent or a caregiver on the other end that's receiving it. So what I'm doing is demonstrating to the parent how to teach their child while I am teaching their child, with the goal of the child thinking, wow, this is really cool. I like this now that I know what to do with a ball. And they start doing it more independently, and then I can fade myself back. But that hand over hand is crucial to teach a skill that a child just isn't learning, quote unquote, from the environment, meaning naturally.
That's a great description. Thank you. So then the coronavirus hit. Had you ever used video conferencing or unified communications technologies for your job before it happened?
Never. I always would tell people who would meet me, don't ask me what my husband does, but I can ask you how you feel. I can ask how you feel about whatever it is that he's doing, because that's how much I understood about it.
Okay. So then you're stuck at home. Your supervisors call you and they tell you that you're not allowed to visit anybody's houses anymore because we're all staying home to flatten the curve. What tools do you have? What do you use in order to do your job now?
So they gave us the platform called GoToMeeting and said, you're now going to be providing services virtually. He said, really? And how do we go about doing that? And basically, we were given a list of resources that weren't very helpful and said, good luck. And so I had to figure out how to use GoToMeeting. I happen to have some help in the house, which really, it's a big cheat on my part. So I didn't have to do what a lot of other people had to do. I just said, honey, how do I do this? And then I was fortunate enough to also be given the Poly Studio, which has really been a game changer in terms of me being able to use this to be able to demonstrate to caregivers how to teach skills to their child, because obviously I'm not there. And so I really need to be able to show caregivers how to do different things. And this technology has been a game changer because I've really been able to do that almost seamlessly. Nothing's ever going to take the place of me being with a child, but this is about as close as it can get. So it's been fabulous for me. Johnny doesn't know what to do, and so you're going to take his little hands and you're going to put them in your hands, and you're going to pick this up and you're going to say, put on, and then you're going to have a parade. Yay, you put it on, woohoo! And then you're going to go to the next one, and you're going to take his hands and you're going to put them on, and then you're going to put it again. You're going to say, put on, you're going to have another parade. Yay, woohoo! And then you'll do it for the next one. Woohoo! And you'll do it for the next one. Woohoo! And then you're going to end. Here's more vocabulary. A duck. There goes the duck. And we push on, and then watch. We can turn. It goes around and around. It does a dance. It does all these fun things.
And you, with that camera, as opposed to a camera built into a computer or an iPad or something, you're able to set it to track you. You're able to set it to zoom out, so you can do demonstrations. You have a lot.
Oh my gosh, yeah. Yeah, if I wasn't using this, my understanding is, I think I tried it for a second, I would have to have things literally, it would be so difficult to show and maneuver whatever materials I'm using to demonstrate a point, because it's such a small window. My goodness, with this technology that I'm using, I don't really have to think about it, because the intelligence does all the work. It'll follow me. It does whatever needs to be done. So all I have to focus on is what I'm doing, as opposed to, oh my God, is it being captured? Do I have to position myself a different way? Because this amazing gadget, which that's what it is for me, does it all for me. It's rather amazing and awesome.
How have the parents you've been working with and the children you've been working with responded to the work now that you're doing it over video and not in person? What has the engagement been like?
So for those, I call them my little students. For my little students who had me going to their homes for a while, I'm not going to lie, it was an adjustment, because when I'm in the home, no matter how much a parent is participating, I'm still leading. It's just the nature of the work. Now, the parent is really in the driver's seat, and I'm their coach. And so I think it was an adjustment, but I think parents have really warmed up to it. And most importantly, now that they have to immediately own whatever the goal is that we're working on in terms of the skills to teach it, they're seeing that they're really able to follow through with it in between sessions, which is what they really should be doing to begin with, in order for their child to meet whatever the goals are that were established for that child.
So that's actually an interesting point, that when you were in people's houses, it was clearly, based on your description, easier for you to work with the children because you could get right in front of them, hand over hand, you could move things around, and it was easier for you. This method of teaching remotely is harder for you, but it's actually forcing the parents to learn the skills to work with their kids, which is what they should have been doing in the first place. So even though it's harder for you, you're creating a new set of teachers and the parents and teaching the skills, because you were never going to be somebody's 24/7 instructor. That was the parent's job.
Exactly. And in all honesty, it's even helped me to further develop my skills and realize how much more when we go back to in person, I will be putting the parent in the driver's seat, because that's where they belong in order for their child to truly make progress.
So
Mm-hmm.
one last question. Beyond the pains and the early bumps of you needing to get your in-house tech support, to show you how to use calendaring and show you how to send an email and show you how to do links and all the rest of that other stuff that may not have been all of it within your skill set, have you found any difficulties? Has the technology failed on you? Have people been struggling with it? Have there been, and it's, just honestly, is it just, you set the meeting and you start and go?
I'm being honest. I set the meeting and I start and go. That's it. Once in a blue moon, but it's on the other end. Maybe the picture freezes for a moment, but that has nothing to do with my end. My end has been flawless, and I'm not just saying that. So far, it's been flawless. It's been great. Hello, Lily.
All right, pick her up. That's a great shot. Pick her up for a second. Let's say hello and goodbye with Lily.
Lily, now that you're here, you have work to do. She's become she becomes part of my my sessions now, because the children can't get enough of her. Say hi.
You'll have to bring her along to your other sessions. Thank you very much for telling your story. Thank you for doing what you're doing, and thank you for making dinner tonight.
You're welcome. You're welcome. You're welcome. My pleasure. Bye.
Well, my next guest today is Joe Way. Joe is what are you? You're the AV person of the decade, right, or the century, or something like that. Why don't I stop and let you introduce yourself and tell everybody who you are and what you do?
No, I don't know about decade at all. No, hey, so I'm Joe Way. I am the director for learning environments at the University of Southern California here in Los Angeles, and then also host the Higher Ed AV podcast. And yes, AV Nation had I know how to stuff a ballot box for AV Professional of the Year for this last year.
Well, congratulations on that, and good to have you with us. So tell me what your job was like briefly. What was a day in the life of Joe like before this pandemic started?
Oh boy, it's so crazy to think, walking around the college campus now, when I get a chance to go back and it have a complete emptiness. The office used to be a lot of hustle and bustle with the 12 of us in there, 100 student workers in and out, a lot of social atmosphere, right? Which is the thing that defines a college campus is the feel, right? And so many people understand that's why they get into the higher ed vertical, and then all of a sudden to have that gone. So we would be working on our classrooms, working on our support, have our teams on the ground. It was consistent 24 hours, 24/7. We even ran our 24-hour help desk, with laptop checkouts. So it was always a nonstop experience until it stopped.
And you would go into the university every day. You wouldn't be remote. You would go in.
Yep, almost all my team would be in every day.
Okay, and then we hit the 1st of March and started to hear about this going on, and as we got to the middle of March, we all at different times got the, what, folks, life has changed, stay-at-home orders. So what is your job like now that everybody's staying at home?
Oh, no, it's so different. Obviously, we're working remotely. The whole team is remote. Only 1 or 2 days a week do we actually go into the office because, hey, we had orders coming, right? We had shipments coming. We had projects that were going, and, there becomes money loss on some things if you don't follow through. But really, we are doing every single thing we can from home, supporting the faculty as well. I mean, that was the biggest change, right? Even not to talk about my job, take a major institution of many tenured faculty who resisted technology, and all of a sudden they're forced to use it overnight. Courses that were not designed to be brought online. And now you have, people Zooming or whatever to be able to get their coursework out and have students who weren't really, had never thought about attending in any other way than a traditional on-campus experience, having to figure out, how do I do the same thing? How do I not just attend class, but now how do I study? How do I get my resources, right? You can't walk into a library to do your research papers? How do you change all of your methodologies? And that's what we do now is we're trying to support that. We're trying to support how do you use the LMS systems? How can you use tools and breakout rooms and create as much of a physical experience when you can't actually be there physically?
So I got to parse a little bit out of what you said and break it up just a little bit. First, I'm hearing from a lot of people over the last few weeks how interesting it's been that instead of the standard technology process, that everybody's finding themselves throwing everybody into the pool feet first. Instead of an easy rollout of technology, it's just here it is, go, and here's your change. And I'm hearing from people that while it's traumatically different, the experiences have gone well. And I think we may be recognizing a trend that all those years we've had of the soft, gradual cutover over a period of weeks doesn't cause any less pain than what we're having just by throwing everybody into the pool. Are you seeing that as well?
Absolutely. And in fact, I think it made it go easier. It's so funny because, it's, and not to necessarily throw out brands because there are tons of great options out there. But before this whole thing happened, we were in the process of becoming a Zoom campus, right? And the thing is we have a change management program, right? Especially at a large enterprise like ours, in order to make anything like that goes through months and months of negotiation, months of figuring out how we're going to roll it out. And we were already in the process by a few months by the time, this had happened. But I remember on a Friday afternoon, we announced that we were going to be doing a test of how this, after we saw that, the University of Washington had to close down, we thought, okay, this is coming. Let's do a virtual test of what it would be like to do this online. So they announced that the following Wednesday through Friday, they were going to do an online classes. The Friday before, we only had about 2,000 or 3,000 users of our enterprise, right? Because we did our test cases, test departments, right? By Monday, they announced that they're doing this. We had over 30,000 users registered onto our Zoom account within 48 hours. It was crazy, and now we're supporting that, and it's like all of a sudden buy-in. You also understand too that like this pandemic makes people have to buy in, right? There's no other choice but to buy in, and that's where it becomes almost easier. In the way that you cut through all of the, I don't want to. We don't have a choice. You have to.
Exactly. Yeah, no, that's interesting. So you went from around 2,000 to around 30,000. How has it gone?
It's gone fantastic. We really did have almost, well, now we're up to over 57,000 licenses for our institution, which is crazy. At the very beginning, it was a little bit suspect. People were starting to learn how to use the tool. But what we noticed in the end was this. We noticed that, I guess let me give two sides. The type of call has changed. At the very beginning, it was, how do I even create an account? How do I log in? How do I download the software? It's like, I don't even know what to do. Well, now the tickets we're getting is, I heard someone said I could do breakout rooms, and then someone said I heard that I can do polling, and I heard that I can. Okay, do you notice that is a functional change? It is no longer what do I do, but how can I do it better? That's huge, and that's how our tickets are changing. Now the second thing is a negative. We were in the national news because we had one of the very first Zoom bombing happen. And we had people jump in and, racist remarks and right into a 200, 300 person class. And that was huge. Now, granted, that's because we tried to make it so easy that, and you had faculty try to make it easy for their students to join that now, anyone with a link, congratulations, you just were able to Zoom bomb. So even though we did all the right things in making sure that you had to do single sign-on, there were still some issues that had to come about, and we learned it the hard way. And it's really sad that other people would take advantage of that situation. And it had nothing to do with the platform. It had solely to do with humans trying to make things easier for people. And now, And now we've taken all of, within overnight, we locked everything down. All the other, pretty much every other institution did as well. Took, password protect all the classes. Is it a little bit harder? Yes, to get up and running. But, sad thing is a couple of people ruin it for everybody. And it's nothing against the platform. And this is the sad part, is when you see these platforms getting torn apart publicly when all of these issues are user issues. They're all had to do with people making it too easy for people to ruin it.
And in all honesty, and this has been missing from all of the FUD, Zoom's obviously been the one that's been in the press most of the time because of how popular it is and how much it's grown. But all the platforms have different vulnerabilities. Maybe they don't have the same ones, but whether you've locked a room, whether you've password protected it, whether you understand the difference between a meeting and a webinar because they have different functions. Just the fact that the most popular one got beat up, and now instead of having our novice users, we now have people, as you pointed out, that are asking the more deep and detailed questions about how do I really use the platform. In a slower rollout, you probably would have had a chance to teach that, but now people had to do it quickly. So that's the platform that you're using for teaching. Is that also the platform that you're using for communicating with your teammates and your staff?
Yep. Yeah. We use mostly Zoom almost for all of our meetings, and then we're also in enterprise Slack as well. So for quick please don't send me an email things. We do a lot of chat, and that also, which is hasn't gotten a lot of talk about. We were in the process of doing an enterprise rollout of Slack at the same time, just kind of as part of our, as ironic as part of our digital transformation was doing our video and our communication platforms. So that got pushed out, and that is huge for being able to communicate on the run and not have hundreds of emails pile up. But that's also been a very important part of it that I think a lot of people even don't think about as well, is just being able, how can you find the best way to communicate with teams and sub teams, because you can't just get up out of your office and walk to a cubicle 3 steps down that you would have done, and are you going to spend 5 minutes of your day putting an email together? Right? Or else you're never going to get anything done. So we have to really think about how we communicate has had to make a complete shift.
Yep, and using these digital platforms. So if you didn't have Zoom or any of the Zoom's equivalents, and if you didn't have Slack or any of the team chat equivalents, how would you guys have been coping? I assume the answer would have been simply to shut down and lose the semester.
Yeah, that would have been, we wouldn't know what we would do, right? No one could have planned for this. If you think about, what if this would have happened a decade ago? What would have happened, right? And I think a lot of people don't recognize that the law requires that during any disaster or pandemic, anything, you have to pick up classes within the week or you have to return tuition. And that's a huge reality, not just with us, that people deal with hurricanes and other natural disasters. We have earthquake plans in place, but we don't have, all of a sudden people can't go on campus and they even come within 6 feet of each other plans. No one had that plan together. So,
and that's one of the key points. Yeah, that's that we've all been doing business continuity and disaster recovery planning for a long time, but no one planned for this. No one planned the flush test, that we all have to go home and flush our technology at the exact same time and see if bandwidth holds up and technology and network holds up. I'm sure we will going forward.
Yep. Oh, absolutely. I still remember, though, too, when we did our very first test on that Wednesday, which what the best part of us is by the time we had said we were going to do our test, by the time the test came, we'd already announced the closing of the semester within days because that's how quickly this escalated, right? And we did that first day, and I remember looking at the numbers, and we pulled it up, and we went, we have 18,000 simultaneous Zoom calls with no issues. Like, we were just, because you're freaking out. You're thinking, in theory, this should work fine. You run the numbers, there shouldn't be an issue. And I still remember the best part is after the next day, really for the first week, we were tracking all this. What is our network bandwidth? What's going through? How are we impacting this? Even for people who have to use VPNs and do this because they have to get information out that's secure. And we recognize that even on the best day, it was still not the highest traffic. We still had Netflix, still as a higher traffic. And it's like, are you kidding me? There's no one on campus, and Netflix is still more of our bandwidth.
Okay, so I don't want to breeze past those numbers without really giving it a second to highlight, because that's the point of this webinar. And correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm repeating what I think I heard you say. At one point, you had 18 100,000 simultaneous calls supporting over 50,000 simultaneous participants, keeping your university operating in a way that could never have been imagined before and could never have been done unless the UC and collaboration tools are available to you to support your daily business and your daily educational mission.
Yep, that's it. You just
That's an
nailed it right
amazing
there.
number just for one institution to have those kind of numbers and to have, the unfortunate incidents of Zoom bombing be all over the news and not have anybody reporting on the hundreds of thousands of people that are now essentially their lives are dependent on these technologies from all the platform providers, for yourself, for health, for social work, which we've got in this broadcast, for some of the NHS support folks in the UK and all over the world. People are depending on this technology to actually continue. A couple of last ones. What about yourself personally? What about your family? How are you guys coping with? Is everybody hitting the internet at the same time? And are you doing any other education or work related things?
We're going. My wife has had to. She's an accountant, so she's working from the dining room. I'm in the bedroom, so I guess I got relegated. She got closer to the kitchen and the refrigerator than I did. So, oh well. But so we're trying to deal with that. We're trying to deal with what's it like to have two working people at the same time. Our daughters, are they're actually kind of moving back from college to do classes online. So far, the internet's been fine. I mean, thankfully, we already, being a tech nerd, you already have good internet at home. And so that has been fine. The sad part is, and I think we were talking before we hit record, is, my grandmother passed from COVID-19, and it's very surreal. As really right at the very beginning, and one of the first cases here in California. And it's strange because you haven't had to have a funeral or memorial. You haven't been able to do a lot of things that you would do as a family. So it's strange that it becomes news and then you move on. So we're dealing as we can, and you just keep moving forward, right? Every day is a new day, and you make the best of it until we're all back. And I'm sure we all can't wait until the next real live tweet up, right? I mean, you go from ISC, I was thinking about that the other day going, oh, ISE. I should have enjoyed that. I mean, I did have a good time, but it really should have taken that in, not realizing that would be the last time we probably would have all seen each other for who knows how long, right?
Yeah, and after ISC in Amsterdam, I flew to Austin, so Austin is my last point of travel until travel picks up again. So we're certainly very sorry for your loss, and totally agree with you that at some point we will come out of this, we'll come out of it together, and hopefully we'll realize what that new reality is. I don't think even when we're all allowed to leave our homes, we're going to be going to any more 30, 40, 50, 60,000 people events anymore, either in stadiums or concerts or theaters or trade shows. But eventually, once they get a vaccine for some of this stuff, we will again, and we'll know that we have this backstop, and people will probably be less technophobic about using collaboration technology to keep their lives going.
Absolutely. I think it's going to be a huge change as we move forward. And I know a colleague of mine from Vanderbilt, BC Hatchett, has said all along. We moved 5 years worth of technology forward in 5 days. That's essentially what higher ed did, happened to us, and now we're all used to it, all working from home. It's going to be very different, and it's going to be great for our industry, right? You hope there's really no winners in this, but if you can say a positive, our industry has gained more respect in the last month than we probably could have done on our own. So when we see all of us internally arguing and bickering with one another, when this is a time for opportunity, this is where we really should step back and recognize that we can continue to deliver on all these promises that we kept saying, but we never had an audience for. Well, now we do. I think that's what we need to take out of this.
That's the message. And if you're one of the players in our space and you're trying to shoot your competitors in the foot, maybe you should realize that you're aiming at your own foot. And let's talk about all the positive stories instead. Joe, thank you very much for being with us. I appreciate it. We will certainly talk to you when this is all over and see what the transition's like afterwards. But for now, stay safe, stay healthy, and keep the faith.
Great. Thank you.
So my final guest for today's webcast needs no introduction. Having said that, I'm going to ask Chris to introduce himself anyway and tell us what he does. What's going on, Chris? How about you?
Thanks, David, for the warm introduction. My name is Chris Neto. I work for Starin. I am a distributor of a lot of different products, including some of the UC products that everybody uses and familiar with, including the Zoom platform and the various different platforms that are out there. How are you today, sir?
I'm doing all right. So on this webcast, we've already heard from people telling us about telehealth and consulting and teletherapy and distance learning and all these other wonderful ways that the unified communications industry and platforms have stepped in the middle of this pandemic to really support us to be able to work from home and keep doing our jobs and communicate and connect with each other. But I wanted to bring you on to give a little bit of words to this phenomenon of the virtual social event. I don't know if you want to call it the happy hour or the virtual meal or I don't know what you guys have been calling it, but tell us about how that came about and what kind of reactions you're getting from people.
One of the things that now has kind of happened is we're not visiting each other in real life, right? As the way it stands right now, we're kind of like isolated. We're all pocket.
We're not visiting anybody in real life right now.
Yeah, correct. So this is about as much real life as you're going to get. So, what I do on Sundays by creating a chat called AV in the AM kind of pushed the community conversation a little further than the typical weekday conversation that we see. With the use of hashtags and existing, groups, we've all chatted online, but Sundays it's very much a you-know-who of AV that is actually talking and communicating, and we got to know a lot of different people. So when this pandemic started hitting, people fled, the offices and came online, whether they liked it or not. They were going to be coming home. Now everybody came into this kind of thinking it was a temporary thing, but what has happened is it's extended. And what the phenomena really is that it's a sweeping wave. So it may not be hitting Midwest right now, but it's hitting the East Coast very hard, where me and you are. Whereas some parts of the world are coming out of it or they're seeing the light. So we're all in different stages, but we're all, as they say, in this together. So part of the conversations that we have on Sunday is great in that, we do the conversation, the topics, and it's very kind of formal, structured kind of thing. But one of the things that is missing is face-to-face. So people within our industry are very used to sitting in front of video. I've been doing it since 1998. The first job I ever had, somebody tossed me a stylus and an old Sony Kodak from back in the day that looked like a PC tower with a little draw-on whiteboard and told me, figure out how to use this because you're going to be doing a lot of troubleshooting for people. From that day forward, I don't think I've ever been shy of having a camera in front of me or talking to a TV. Much more so than, I guess, people that are going into people later on that entered the technology space after me. Because I specifically was working in video conferencing back in '98. That's when I first got my feet wet in AV. So sitting in front of a camera is not very hard for a lot of us. And for a lot of us, it's not really a challenge. But what we're finding now is it used to be just me and you and salespeople that were out there doing these demos. Everybody's home. Everybody's now turning on a camera. Everybody's getting more comfortable with this. So people that have never been on camera are coming on camera for the first time. You also have people that are missing conversations outside of, technology conversations in real life. Outside of their customers face-to-face, there is no after hours, going to the bar with your friends, or there's no council meetings if you belong to a technology council. You have these dinners in New York. There's none of that. So what do we do? What do we do as AV nerds? We just turn to technology to make this happen. And it's no different than what's happening in the real world because you're seeing it happen all over the place. My son is 17 years old. He takes Taekwondo. He would probably get offended if I got that wrong. But he takes Taekwondo classes in my family room, right? Every night using the same technology I'm using now to talk to you. My wife, who never knew what a Zoom was, now calls her friends and tells her, hey, I know how to Zoom. You want to get together and Zoom. She's talking to people that she hasn't talked to because everybody's now craving some sort of interaction. So what happens to AV people? Well, you give us the ability to put a couple people on video, that grows to more. So A couple weeks ago, I came up with an idea to do an AV happy hour on a Friday night. I didn't invent this. This is nothing new, right? But I'm going to do what I can do because of my social presence online and my connections of people who I know. I just put it out there and said, hey, Friday night, 6 o'clock, I'll send you all a meeting invite. Join me for a beer online. It's BYOB. Nobody's drinking and driving. Everybody knows their way home after the thing. You don't have to take your keys. And you know what? Shoes are not even required in some of these cases.
Shoes, pants.
Pants for that matter. People are showing up in shorts. Whatever the case is, we get together and we have these conversations. And basically the first day was 20 people. It's kind of cool. Hey, there's 20 people on. Let's do it again next week. Next week it went from 20 to 60. And then the last one that I did before we switched the schedule up a little bit, we went from 60 to 100. So people are probably sitting here going, oh my God, what are you doing with 100 people online? How are you handling this? Well, in between the three trials that we did, we played around with something called the Breakout Rooms. And the Breakout Rooms are great. So basically what we did was we take the room of 100 people and we say, we're going to zap you in 10 minutes. We're going to zap you into a different room. And you're going to be out there for 15 minutes. So we hit the randomizer, essentially. I mean, it sounds like I'm on a game show. And boom, we created 10 rooms prior to the meeting started. So there you go. 10 rooms are open, and now the randomizer is randomly putting people into rooms. The great part about it is that you're having a beer and I'm talking to you. Next thing you know, I'm out of talking to you, and I'm in a room full of people that are maybe from the UK. And what do we do when we're in there? The first thing, what every AV nerd does, we start comparing, what do you do? What do you do? How do you do it? What's your best way? Man, this company's great. Oh, this company sucks. We do whatever we do. It's no different than being at a bar and just moving to the other side of the bar. So for people that are introverted, you can sit and listen and lurk. You don't even have to really talk much. But it kind of we kind of drive that out of you, because if I go into a room and there's 10 people and I don't know two of those people, hey, I know everybody in this room, but I don't know you, Marvin, or I don't know you, Mary. Tell me about yourself and introduce yourself to the crowd. Now all of a sudden everybody's feeling kind of part of something. And that is what is going on right now in the world, is that we're not part of anything. We are on an island, and we are just broadcasting out into the unknown. Right?
So two parts of that I want to parse out in a little bit more detail.
Sure.
The first thing you said was something you said with your wife, which is interesting that most of the people that I've spoken to today echoed that comment. And the comment roughly goes like, in our normal lives, there are some people that we have as friends that we talk to maybe once a month or once a year. But now that this thing has happened, we're having regular conversations with them. Mm-hmm. So the fact that we're all stuck at home is actually, with the blessing of UC technology, whatever platforms you're using, we're now becoming more social, not less social, in dealing with the people. We're physically distant, but we're socially closer to people that we haven't spent a lot of time speaking with. And the technology is easy enough so that my other point is, yes, we're all AV geeks and nerds and UC people that are playing with this technology because we do.
But we're still human at the core.
But you're also reading stories about people who are teachers and people who are mechanics and people who are therapists who are all getting together in exactly the same way. It's not just a technology for the AV nerds anymore. You're reading about these virtual happy hours so much that there are now jokes going on about them that I can't go to your virtual happy hour because I've been invited to 2 other virtual happy hours, so we're going to happy hour hop. It's being done by everybody now.
When Saturday Night Live creates a skit based on that exact thing that we just said, it's mainstream. Without a doubt. It has, for lack of a better term, it has jumped the shark, right? For those that don't know that term, please reference the old Happy
Well,
Days.
I don't know. Jump the shark's kind of got the opposite connotation, but it certainly hit its stride at this point. No, I'll agree with you.
It's kind of plus. Everybody kind of knows what's going on now. You're not surprising anybody. I doubt you're going to walk up to anybody, within a certain age range, and even some of the older generation, that if you say, I got to go home, I got to go Zoom somebody, that they're not going to think weird thoughts. Like, what do you mean Zoom somebody?
It's definitely entered the cultural lexicon that we're dealing with.
Absolutely.
And that's really the point of this entire webcast that you get to have the last word on, in that what we could have been doing in this collaboration industry is we could have been talking about that. We could have been talking about the hundreds of thousands of users on all platforms that are teaching and learning and growing, socializing and supporting our work and all the wonderful things and telehealth and telemedicine and checking in with older relatives to make sure that they're healthy and they have everything they need. That's the stories that we should be coming out with about how great this technology has been for everybody. And unfortunately, instead of that, we've had a lot of players in the industry pointing fingers at other players, saying, "I'm better than you, I'm more secure than you, I'm this than you, I'm that than you." And it's unfortunately, been picked up by mainstream media now that oh, look at all the terrible things that are going on here, instead of the wow, hundreds of thousands of people are getting together every day, and the internet's not breaking, and the various UC platforms aren't breaking, and the whole industry is coming together to provide a level of support that we didn't even know we needed until this crisis happened.
Well, I mean, think about it. It's kind of like this happened at an age where broadband is readily available to most people in big cities, right? If you are and I'm not going to say everywhere, because there are parts of the country that still do not have quality internet.
It needs to be considered a utility, and that's one of the many things we need to fix in this country.
100%. I believe now, even Governor Murphy today, either today or yesterday, actually came out and said you can't shut off internet and telephone. People cannot be disconnected from the outside world. And I find it ironic that the phone is listed before the TV. And to be honest with you, I don't use each. I don't use my phone or TV to find out what's going on in the world. I turn on my computer or my cell phone, not my house phone. Just to clarify, there are still phones that hang on a wall with a cord on it for some people. I have one. It doesn't ring because I kind of just shut the ringer off because the only people that called me were not necessary. So it was it was interesting to hear the New Jersey governor come out and say, hey, you can't shut this off. Right. And to include that same conversation is happening too. You can't throw people out. You can't evict people. You can't shut off their water or their gas because everybody's going through a crisis. And now to bring it full circle back, we all have a need to connect as humans, right? I wish I could tell you that this is an easy thing to go through, and it's not. We are very connected in the terms of we can pick up our computer or phone and connect to somebody really quick and get some answers. I do that all day. My company has been operating solely on the Zoom platform for messaging and for communications. We have the Zoom phone, so on and so forth. That's what Starin does, right? So I'm connected all day and all night. But it's still not easy. Right, you still got in the first week, it was adapting to being. I've been a remote worker. The first week was adapting to the fact that now my kids were joining me, and my wife for a couple days, and then it turned into a week. Now it's been a couple weeks. That adds a lot to what I'm typically used to. I mean, aside from my dog not knowing where to go sit anymore because it was just me and my dog was my assistant. I look down, I don't trip over her anymore. She's in different parts of the house looking for whoever's rummaging around. The kitchen and the pantry seem to be the two popular places for anybody to find anybody in this house. It seems that seems to be the thing.
We've had pet photo bombs on this video, so don't worry about it if your dog
absolutely walks. You got pets, you got your kids and your spouse, and you got a whole new dynamic. Toward me, it was always very quiet from 9 o'clock till about 3 o'clock. I had the house to myself. Absolutely, I could have blasted my music. I could have done some testing. I could have ran pink noise. Do what us nerds like to do when we don't have anybody in the house and we can actually make some noise. You can hang up a call and scream to bloody hell for all you want, but you can't do that now. We're all now being very respectful of our space, but I mean, I still will break in between meetings to go help my daughter with Spanish class, right? My son has to do drums, so I have to add, a half hour into the point where he has to do his drum work so that he submits it to his music teacher. So, I mean, it's just changing it. Now, the work hasn't changed, right? I still put in the hours, crazy hours, because I'm getting up at 6 and I'm still rolling, through my computer at 6, 7 o'clock at night. But that's part of the gig, and I've been used to that. To some, there's some changes. And what we're seeing online in these happy hours and mixes, is that people are showing up and they're just like, how do you guys do this? How have you done this for this year? Like, working at home is not all it's cracked up to be. It can work. It takes a system, and it takes you getting into that routine, good or bad. I've seen bad routines. I've seen good. But you get into a routine. You get up. You do certain things. You kind of break away. You come back. I'm not used to waiting for lunch. I just go upstairs and make whatever I need to make and come back down. Now I'm in line. I'm like, wait a minute. What's going on here? I just need to get a sandwich. I got to roll out the door. And you're cooking gourmet or not cooking. I need something. What am I supposed to do?
You give yourself 6 minutes on the schedule to go grab a snack, and you get up there and you got to get in line at the kitchen. Your 6 minutes doesn't work anymore.
Exactly. Now all of a sudden I'm back at corporate America where I'm running to the canteen just to get something to eat, and my time is going. I got to be back at my desk because God knows somebody's going to walk by and I'm not at my desk at that hour. It's kind of now turned into that. I want to be able to do 100 different things. It's multitasking at a premium right now, because you want to be able to, do your work. You still want to keep some sanity. You still want to dedicate some time to family, right? And then you want to dedicate that piece to friends. For me, going on these happy hours or running these happy hours have been very good, because, I will be the first to tell you, I put on a smiley face and try to tell you that it's great. It is, but there's days that it's tougher than most, right? It's not all, it's not all rosy, as I think AC/DC once said.
Yeah, we're not close to the beginning of the end, but we may be at the end of the beginning where we are, which is
exactly.
At least progress.
Exactly. And to find out that somebody in Omaha is going through the same struggles, and to know that somebody out in California for some, in some place in California has discovered a cool new way to do something different, right? Or to hear that somebody is doing virtual wine tasting. And there's hope. There's hope of sanity in a modified kind of new way, right?
Sure. All right, so last question, last point to this. Can you imagine going through this unfortunate, horrific experience that all of humankind are going through right now without these unified communications tools? If it were like 20 years ago, what would life be like if we didn't have this available as a support?
We honestly, without right now, and you saying it's unified communications, I will put it. I'll go even more primal. I will say that this happens today because of broadband. We couldn't do this on dial-up. We could not have business on dial-up. There's not enough phone lines in the house to do business the way we do business. It would have been a lot of different times. But if we would just go back to 9/11, right? Everything shut down. It was only for a couple of days, and we are in that tri-state area. Everything was shut down. Everything was locked down as the world changed. Nothing happened. We forget that. I'm not comparing it specifically to what happened in 9/11. This is kind of like, this is the day that won't end. It just keeps going and going and going, and it's weird, David. I don't know. Like, I'm dependent on technology to tell me what day it is right now. Because, honestly, Friday, if it's not on my Outlook, Friday doesn't exist. Saturday is just the day that I'm doing shopping. That's the only way I know, because I'm not in the house. Saturday, I try to run my errands because I'm still, the sense of community, aside from what you're seeing internal to AV, is also happening externally. There's a lot of people helping other people. And in times like this, that's when the true human spirit kind of comes out. I have a responsibility to my mom and to my father-in-law to still go out and risk what I'm doing to lower their risk. And at the same time, it's weird. It's something out of a movie. I go out, I go food shopping, I load up, I'm masked up, like I'm going to be some like train robbers, from the 1910 or the 1800s. I'm robbing a train. I walk into a bank with a bandana on my face, perfectly normal. I walk in, I do what I got to do, grab all my stuff, take it to the people's house, to my mom's place or to my father-in-law's place. Set it in a place where they're not. Leave their wipes there and say, wipe down everything. I'm going to leave. Meanwhile, I'm masked up. I'm 6 feet away. This is not normal. And the funny thing is that technology, if it wasn't for technology normalizing what we do on an everyday basis, I couldn't stand this close to you in real life right now. Kind of weird. I understand it's getting kind of trippy, but you're 2.5 feet from my face. I couldn't be 2.5 feet from you talking to you in a tone. I have to speak louder now because I can't be that close. I was at a supermarket and an elderly gentleman behind me wanted to say something to me, and I couldn't understand what he was saying, and he was getting close.
It sounds like it's exactly. I had that same problem at a bunch of stores too.
But since he couldn't talk to me, what did he do? He turned around and talked to the elderly guy behind him and said, huh? And next thing you know, those two are close. I'm like, guys, separate. It's like,
We shouldn't joke about it, but yeah, I hear you. Well, I've also seen the pictures online of the guy standing in line at the supermarket, pulling the glove off with his teeth so that he could, type something on his phone. There's no accounting for intelligence in some of these places anyway. Just look who we elected. So yeah.
You want to push my buttons? Anybody who's dropping off masks and gloves inside their shopping carts and leaving, or dropping them on the floor and leaving, you should all be ashamed of yourselves. That's a PSA. Do not come to my neighborhood and do that.
There you go.
Please don't. That is horrible.
Chris,
but anyway.
Thank you very much for joining me and for shedding light on this and for doing what you do to kind of bring your social community and your social corner together. Everybody certainly has the kudos for you, and to the rest of the industry, this is what we should be talking about. We should be talking about how people are coming together in ways that were not possible if we didn't have these technologies and these supports going forward. So I implore all of you that are watching this program, please share your stories of good events. Share what's going on. And in fact, the IMCCA has opened up a new Twitter handle that you can send it to, and I'll share those stories, little videos, little stories. It's at IMCCA celebrates UC and video. And please send that information over to us. Get it out via your own channels. This is not about which platform is better or which technology is better. This is about our entire industry rising with the tide of all boats and coming to the aid of a world that now needs what we do more than ever. And please let make that the message going forward. So for the IMCCA, for Chris, for everybody else that joined me today, thanks very much for joining us. We will see you on the next webcast.